Hey guys, so welcome to the vlog. My name is MisterET, and in today's episode we finally tear into this engine and find out how it blew and exactly what the damage is. So stay tuned. So like with any engine, the first thing that we'll want to do is remove the valve cover here. And as you can see, I've already untightened all of these screws, so I'll actually be able to separate these two surfaces quite easily. Once that's done, we'll start by removing all of these different accessories here, all these different pulleys, and we'll have access to basically the timing chain and all of these things. And then we'll remove everything that is around the engine that might be in the way of us removing the head from the block. So let's start with the valve cover, and then let's move to the timing chain cover over here. So as you can see, the underside of this engine is actually really clean. So I believe the previous owner, when he mentioned that he would change out the oil every 5,000 kilometers or every 3,500 miles. So now we're going to try and remove the crank pulley bolt. It's a 21mm, and these things are notoriously difficult to remove on just about any 4-cylinder engine. So we're going to try with the impact here. It's got 700 pound-feet of torque. It's fully charged on the air compressor. So we'll see if that does it. I expect it will not, but let's give it a try. And I guess it's my lucky day. And so now we can continue removing everything else on this front cover over here. So guys, as you can see, everything looks in pretty good shape over here as well. We'll check the chains in a few moments. So let's look at this thing. So camshafts and the lobes and everything looks to be in pretty good shape on the head. The chain itself looks to be okay. It only had 88,000 kilometers or about 65,000 miles on it. So there is absolutely no play here. If we look at these guys over here, they look good. There's not that much play here. So everything looks pretty good. The tensioner, I'm guessing, still is doing a pretty good job. So the next step in removing this is two things. So we're going to start by removing the tension over here so we can remove all of these chains on the front. And then we're going to remove all the different caps for the two camshafts. So we can actually remove the two camshafts, and we'll make sure that these stay in the right order because they need to go back into the right order once it's reassembled. I'm going to take that precaution because I'm hoping this head will be reusable and I can sell it. In the event that it is not, then I'll just throw everything away. But in the event that it is reusable, I want to make sure that I keep tabs on what goes where. So those are the two next steps, and that's going to uncover the head bolts, and then we'll be able to remove the head from the block. So guys, now that we've removed the tensioners on the side here, everything on this chain is loose. So we can actually just pick it up and remove it like so. This thing looks to be in really good shape. So next step for us is to remove this bottom chain over here that I believe drives the mechanical oil pump. And I think to really get this thing off, we'll have to remove the 10 mil that's over here. and then we remove both gears at the same time. And this is interesting because there's actually shims on the crankshaft, so I guess if you're uninstalling this and installing it afterwards, you really want to make sure that you keep those and that you use them in the right order. They're basically these guys over here. So I've just repositioned you guys at the top here so you can see well. And what I'm going to do is actually going to go from the center all the way out to distribute the load that is on this camshaft. And normally what I'm going to do is just in increments a little bit, because I'm trying to alleviate the pressure from the springs and not actually warp the camshaft. I don't think that even just removing these completely and then these and these and these will warp the camshaft, but I don't want to take any chances, so I'm going to just do it this way. And now we should be able to just lift this out of the way. And there we go. So if we look at the camshaft, there's a bit of wear on it, which is normal. The lobes still look very good. There's no pitting on the ends of it. It's not looking different or anything like that, so this will be fully reusable. So we've removed the intake side camshaft. We'll do the same thing on the exhaust side camshaft. So now that we've removed all of these, we now have access to all of the different head bolts that are recessed inside the head. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the center ones and make our way out, and again just remove them very slowly to remove the pressure between the head and the block so that the head does not warp, and then we'll be able to pull this off. Now upon closer inspection, before we actually remove this head, we'll need to remove the high pressure fuel rail as well as this pipe and everything that's on the side over here that's already loose off of the top side of the block. So let's remove, I believe these are 10 mils, so let's remove those and let's get this off of the intake side of the head so that we can lift this off. And there we go. Okay, so everything's out here and I've just loosened this up. So all I've got left to do here is actually remove these 4 plugs for the injectors. I'm going to disconnect this hose so I can get all of this out, and we'll see if we can actually remove the injectors from inside the block afterwards. So for anybody who's trying to find their knock sensor, it's actually bolted on the underside of the block over here. So when this is in the car, access probably isn't very good. So you can see how it's actually screwed in there. Well guys, we're finally getting to that point where we're going to be able to remove the head from the block. We've got everything disconnected on the front of the block. Everything is disconnected on the back of the block, or I should say intake side and exhaust side. All we have left to do now is actually remove the head bolts. So let's go ahead and do that, and then look at the carnage once we pop the head off. Fingers crossed there is no damage to the underside of this head. The valves are in good shape and everything, but this is the moment of truth, so let's find out. So as you can likely see on camera, I've got all the head studs here actually pulled out and removed. And previously what I had mentioned was that I would start in the center and make my way out. And then after looking at a few different diagrams, I could see from Mazda that they actually want you to start out and move your way in, just so your pressure on the head and everything is even. So you actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is actually how you need to remove this, and you need to do it in 2 to 3 different sequences. So you untorque a little bit, so you go basically a quarter turn on the first time, half a turn on the second time, and then all the way out on the third time. And that gets you to where we are right now. So I don't know if you guys have ever removed a head on an engine, but usually when you do that, you end up with a bunch of coolant everywhere. So I'm actually going to remove these head studs and then remove the head to set it down, and we can have a look at it. Let's do this. Let's look at this for a second here. So if you look at these piston domes, you can see that there's a pocket over here, and it's the same in each one of the cylinders. And this one here is actually turning sideways. So this means that this piston has actually moved from being in that direction to being in that direction. And we already know from looking at the hole on the side of the block here that the connecting rod is completely disconnected from the crankshaft and from the piston. So this probably slapped around a little bit. So if we look at the head, it's right over here. Oddly enough, it looks pretty good. Now this is shiny compared to all of these having carbon deposit on there, but I don't actually see any marks or feel anything when I touch them with my finger here. So I believe this head will actually be fully reusable. Now the next step for us is actually flipping the engine upside down and removing the oil pan. But before I actually do that, the way these engines are built, you can probably see this mount here at the bottom. This is actually going into the oil pan. So I'm going to need to move this a little bit higher, probably on this here or this one up here, and do the same thing on the other side, and I'll do them one at a time so I'm not creating an issue on the block here and hopefully not dropping it to the ground. And then I'll be able to flip this around and correct this. So we'll just go on a time lapse of me basically changing where this mounts, and then we'll be able to remove the oil pan. Well guys, we're going to have to hope for the best here, because there's no way I can get this guy here to mount up to any of the bolt holes. I was trying to get this here to mount a little bit lower so I can't get the arm to reach, and then this guy here would need to go in the same slot to go into one of these two over here. So we've actually removed quite a bit of weight in removing the head, and we're going to continue removing weight from this engine by removing the oil pan. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we're good with 3 mounting points. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this if this is an engine you're trying to keep, but in this case here, where we can see that there's clearly a nice big huge gap and hole and everything, and this block is going into the trash, I don't really mind that working that way. So let's move to actually removing these 10 millimeters all the way around the pan here and removing the oil pan. Let's have a look at this here. So everything looks normal on this side of the block, so you can see that the pickup is actually plastic on these things. And then if we start looking on this side over here, we can see all the carnage. So we've got our connecting rod all the way at the bottom here. This is broken all the way through. I think this is actually part of the section that's holding the block on. There's pieces like this that are falling out everywhere. So what we're going to do next, look at this here. This is a nice big piece. So wow, look at the size of these pieces that are broken off. I think this is part of the piece that's holding the transmission there. There's a bolt that fell in there. That's one of the one of these bolts here, so that wasn't actually there. I think there's a bit of damage over here. I don't expect that the crankshaft will be reusable by any means, but let's continue disassembling this piece over here, which I believe is the oil pump. I'm not that familiar with these engines, but I believe this is the oil pump here. So let's remove all of this so we have better access to the crankshaft. So I'm likely going to correct myself a few times on this vlog here. I think what I just removed is what on some engines is called the balance shafts. I believe so. I'm not really sure. There's a gear that drives that here, and the oil pump is actually over here with the pickup, and that makes a little bit more sense here. So my apologies for that. And may not be a balance shaft, so I don't know exactly what this is here, but this is quite a large assembly and it looks like it's cast. So as you can see, we've got a nice collection of parts over here on the workbench, and as I was mentioning earlier, we've done what we could here to keep these all in the right order so that we don't lose track of what goes where for these camshafts and the head itself. Another huge piece over here. So I think our next step is going to be to uninstall this here all the way across, and of course remove the oil pump over here. So normally what you should be doing when you're removing a crankshaft is first you should remove all the bolts and the nuts here on the different connecting rods, push those out from the top of the engine, and then remove all of these and you have access to your crankshaft. So let's continue the disassembly here. Crankshaft is now removed, so let's have a look at this thing. So the main bearings all look pretty good. As you can see, the rods, the three that are still good, are still kind of hanging in there. Haven't pushed out the pistons yet. This is a part of a rod and a part of a piston that's turned, and as you can see, this actually ate up into the block on each end. This stuff here is not supposed to be there. If you look at all the other ones, it's nice and even all the way across. So this actually slapped in there really good until it actually broke the block. And if I look at the crankshaft, oddly enough, this thing still looks good. I can't feel anything if I'm touching it with gloves or anything like that. The only nick I see on it, so this here, as well as this, is what hit. The rest of it, all the gears are there. It still looks straight. I wouldn't necessarily reuse something like this, but if somebody here wants to hit me up and actually wants this crank, if you're local to Quebec City, it'll be my pleasure for you to drop by and grab it. If you're not and you would like me to ship it to you, I don't have an issue doing that. Shipping is at your cost. So let me know if you want a free crankshaft. So I think the next step for me will actually be to hammer out these three connecting rods, pistons, things like that, and then look at what the actual walls look like when we turn the block back around. So let's have a look at this block. So if we have a look at the top here, everything looks pretty good, but you can see that it's severely gashed at the bottom on both sides of this piston. All the other ones, and you can see the squirters at the bottom. The other ones still look pretty good. Now you can clearly see through the block here. And if we look at these pistons, connecting rods, so the 3 look good here. This actually broke off completely. You can see the squirter that got squished. Piston itself, as you can see, is broken on the side here. Got bashed on the other side pretty good. And if we look at the other side, you can see that there is gashing over here, which to me feels like it would be contacting the valves. But when I look at the valves themselves, I don't see anything. It all looks pretty good. These look pretty good over here. Everything looks pretty good on the underside of this head. I was almost expecting this to be much worse. And the crankshaft, again, looks pretty good. There's a lot of this carnage here at the bottom. So this is all broken. Oil pan's broken. This is still good, but I don't know who would need this. So lots and lots of broken pieces. Another piece of a rod here that's completely broken off. So this is really what slapped around and destroyed itself outside of this block. Just wanted to show you guys this. So these are some of the bearings that go on the crank, and though I can't find any surface on the crank that seems to be gashed or anything like that, when I look at these bearings, hopefully you can see that here, there is pitting and things like that, and this one's actually squished on the side. So this is for one of the rods here. So that's why I say I wouldn't necessarily recommend using this crankshaft, even though it looks really good. But if anybody wants it, be my guest. So what I'll be doing in the next little bit off camera is just reinstalling loosely all the parts that go on this head, and I will be putting this head up for sales. Aside from that, we've made pretty nice mess of everything here. So guys, this will be it for today's vlog. I hope you enjoyed the inside look of this engine, looking at all the damage, the carnage, what is still usable, what is not, how to disassemble one of these engines. I will see you again in our next video, and if you have not done so already, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. There are more videos like this coming your way.